Hey guys, Jay here. So, bit of a last minute video. The Yuki Tsunoda Liam Lawson switch at Red Bull obviously happened. It was confirmed this morning, and F1 Fantasy now appears to be back up and running. Now, there's no profile pictures on the new asset cards, but if these are the correct asset cards, then it looks like their prices have just basically switched and their points have reverted back to zero. So just two very quick things, and then I'm just gonna speed through some team build ideas that I am now considering given this change. To be honest, not much has changed for me, but I'll just go through them anyway. First of all though, very important, if you have either Yuki Tsunoda or Liam Lawson in your team, there is an action required notification on the home screen that says Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson have changed race teams. If you currently have either driver in your team, you will need to use your transfer allowance to avoid inactive driver penalties. In other words, if you have two free transfers, one of them will need to be used to transfer Yuki Tsunoda or Liam Lawson out, even if that means into the new asset. If you save the transfer at China, then you would have had three free transfers, but now you'll be down to two because the same thing. You'll have to use one to replace the old Yuki or the old Liam Lawson asset with the new one or with someone else. The second important thing, and this is where it does change my strategy a little bit, is it does mean that, as I said, if we scroll down a little bit here on F1 Fantasy Tools Budget Builder, you can see that Liam Lawson is now in the light blue for Racing Bulls, Tsunoda is now in the dark blue for Red Bull, and you'll see that race 2 are blank. So the assumption is they're going to be zero in each of those, which means Lawson has now jumped up to 5th in the B tier asset range. And if this is correct as things stand, like if this is correct, before free practice, because remember this will be updated after free practice, Lawson would need 11 points to get a 0.6 million increase, which is obviously a huge difference to when he was at Red Bull. Tsunoda, it's gone up slightly to 21. It was 25 originally, but it's now 21. But again, they are very dubious assets, and I'll explain why, and this also affects me with my selection regarding Alexander Albon. To cut a long story short, and to make it really simple, green good, red bad. You want to be aiming for the best green assets, preferably the ones that are going to increase your budget. So that would ideally be the tier Bs or the budget assets. But the problem that I now find myself in, for example, with my strategy, is I wanted to run 6 B tier assets for budget, but it looks like now I'm going to be down to 4, and then obviously along with HAAS, the constructor. And I'll explain that in a sec. I'm going to go through some team ideas. What this does mean is this, I think this is going to affect people's budgets. Now, on a positive note, and I don't know if I can share it, but if you do have a Patreon account with F1 Fantasy Tools, there was an article posted on the Patreon site this afternoon, where basically the rises and decreases are going to be in waves. So you want to ride the waves. So when your asset is going up, you want to ride with them. When your asset's starting to fall, you want to let them loose and find someone who's rising. So yeah, as I say, green good, red bad. So where does that leave me? Now you'll have to forgive me. I'm looking at some screenshots that I took on my phone, but obviously I'll adjust this for the video. In terms of my original idea, if I'm showing you the F1 Fantasy Tools screenshot, do bear in mind that Stroll was going to be my DRS driver, not Albon, but for some reason it automatically puts the most expensive asset as the DRS driver. That being said, looking at this team to start with, so the original idea was McLaren, HAAS, Stroll as the DRS boost driver, Possibly Albon, although it was going to be tight because he needed 19 points. Hulkenberg, Ocon, and Behrman. Now, the problem with this team is, yes, it grows budget by 2.7 million and it saves around 16, 17 million in the bank. Points wise, I appreciate that I did say in my last video, we're sacrificing points to build our budget, and that is still true to a degree, but we don't want to over sacrifice to the point where we can't catch up. And at this point, this team would now be, regarding the simulations, 94.9 points, which is obviously under 100 points. So this team now doesn't look like, doesn't appeal to me as much as it did before. So that brings me to the team that I was actually considering changing my mind to, which is bringing in Antonelli for Albon and running Antonelli as my DRS driver. Possible increase of 3.2 million with 121.5 points and save about 10 million in the bank. Problem with this is obviously Antonelli is now a tier A premium driver, so he only increases by 0.3 rather than 0.6. So this is where I'm not going to be able to make as much money that I was hoping to, and this is where I think people are going to get affected. At the moment though, this is my preferred team, just to stick with my current strategy, because that way I save 10 million plus anything else that I've saved. Now, having said that, you could switch Antonelli to Russell just for a couple more points, but it obviously will be slightly more expensive, and increase in terms of budget, it is still the same at 3.2. So you could weigh up your options. You can go Antonelli, you can go Russell. Bearing in mind, Japan looks like it's going to be a wet race, and Antonelli is still technically a rookie, but then Antonelli did get driver of the day in China for no apparent reason. Another team I've got here, which does have more of a budget increase, but it is under 100 points and it does run to premium constructors, is to go with HAAS VCarb, Norris as the premium asset, as the main premium asset I should say, with Antonelli, Stroll, Ocon and Behrman. This team is appealing. The only problem I have with this team is I don't like the fact that I'm not running a premium constructor. That being said, if you want to take a gamble, you could get an extra 0.4k in the bank. It's really going to be down to you what risk you take, what you're willing to sacrifice, your constructor or your driver, basically. Bearing in mind though, long term, the constructors are the ones that gain the most points, because obviously every constructor has two drivers racing for them. Now again, we've got the Russell variant, slightly more points, slightly more expensive, but otherwise it's the same in terms of value increase. Now, if you do want to gun for points more so and increase your budget a little bit, there is this option, which is to run two budget constructors and now 3 premium drivers. So in this team, I've got HAAS, VCarb, Norris, Russell, Antonelli, Ocon, Behrman. It is just over 100 million in terms of what you would need to make this team, but it does come with a potential 3.3 value increase and 113.5 points. The only thing I don't like about this team is I'm not saving any money, which could be beneficial later on. Now let's get to the Tsunoda and Lawson teams. Right now, as things stand, I personally am not keen on either asset. The reason I'm not keen on either asset is because we don't know how Yuki's going to be in the Red Bull, because there's a lot of talk that the car is the problem. We don't know how Lawson's going to be in the V car, in the Racing Bull, because his confidence might have been knocked. He's not had a great start to the season. Also, one thing where Albon does have an advantage in between these two is Albon is unlikely to decrease, because the only way Albon will decrease is if he gets a -4 or worse, whereas Lawson and Tsunoda do need to score points. In other words, if Lawson and Tsunoda come away with negative points, they're definitely falling. That's the only advantage that Albon has over the two. The other thing is, remember I said green good, red bad. Red, 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 red. Unless they really impress in free practice, and this, when this is updated after free practice, it looks tempting. Right now, me personally, I'm not touching Tsunoda and Lawson. That being said, if you are willing to take that risk, I have this team here, which is McLaren, HAAS, Antonelli, Tsunoda, Stroll, Ocon, Behrman. It would cost 99 million as things stand. Could come away with a 2.4 budget increase and a good score of 124.6, or a decent score I should say, because really scores wise we want to be building our teams to hit the 200s, and that's where the premium constructors will come in, hopefully soon rather than later in terms of our season. But that's one option you could go. And then I've got a differential here, which is basically swapping Stroll for Ocon. So we've got McLaren, HAAS, Antonelli, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Behrman. It's a little cheaper. Do come in 0.4 less in terms of value increase, and you do come half a point less on points, but you are saving, 2.5 million in the bank. If you want 4 more points, you could change Antonelli to Russell. There's not really much in it. That's up to you. And then finally, I have got a Lawson build here. You will need just over 100 million, but it's McLaren, HAAS, Norris as your premium asset, your premium driver, DRS boost 2 times, with Stroll, Ocon, Behrman, and of course Lawson. 140 points is tempting, 2.4 value increase, but again, my gut feeling right now is to not touch the new Lawson and the new Tsunoda asset until after free practice, when we'll have the updated simulations. So that's my very quick, and I do mean very quick, thoughts on these updates. Does this change my strategy? Well, as I've already said, unfortunately, yes. It does mean I'm now looking at running 5 budget assets rather than 4. To cut a long story short, as a whole, it's if every asset was to hit their target over the next 4 races, the difference is 1.2 million. So it's 1.2 million less than what the total would have been if I could have run 6 budget assets. 1.2 million may not sound like a lot, but that could be the difference between a decent budget asset or a bad budget asset later on down the line, when we hopefully upgrade to higher premium assets, then going for the lower budget assets. So yeah, this, just my personal thoughts on this. This is a complete mess. I wouldn't trust Red Bull with a barge pole right now. I did record a video earlier giving my thoughts about the situation, but I decided not to release it because, quite frankly, I was just saying how much of a mess it was and that I just don't trust Red Bull. I just think that doing this now is the worst thing they could have done. I am being biased on that because I also think this is going to affect the game, the F1 fantasy game, and I think it's going to affect the F1 fantasy game not in a good way. Hopefully I'm wrong. I am talking out of frustration with that because obviously we want to settle our teams as soon as possible in the season before we can't afford, the best assets. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to try and edit this down. Like I say, a very quick video, so it might not be the best quality, I'm afraid. Hopefully it will give you some ideas for your team heading in Japan, and just hope it helps. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Really appreciate it, and thank you for helping the channel grow recently. It means a lot to me. All the best. Bye.